Hello, and welcome to another edition of Your Therapist Needs Therapy, the podcast where two mental health professionals talk about their mental health journey and how they navigate mental wellness while working in the mental health field. I'm your host, Jeremy Schumacher, licensed marriage and family therapist. To support the show, like, share, subscribe. We've got merch. Put that in the links too. I'm excited to have a local therapist on. Somebody who I've come into contact with recently, and I love to highlight local folks here in Milwaukee, and I like to talk to people who do work with couples. So I'm very excited to be joined today by Madeline Bush. Madeline, thanks for joining me.
Happy to be here. Thanks, Jeremy.
I always start every episode with the same question, which is, how did you come to work in the mental health field?
I really feel like it was the theme of service was just modeled to me within my family. So my mom was really big into service. Her populations that she tends still to serve is the aging geriatric community. So she was very involved in nursing homes and assisted livings communities. And then my dad and I had a annual tradition where we would go and volunteer. So from a young age, like a preteen age, I was seeing my parents do it. I was participating in it with my folks. And from there, it just kind of took off. I went to college and thought I might study nonprofit administration, and I started to. And then like a lot of other therapists say, my psychology classes just became more and more interesting. And so I followed that thread. And, a few years later, I decided therapy was where I wanted to serve in the mental health field. So, and it's really felt like the best fit. I love our field so much. I often tell folks it doesn't really feel like work. It just feels like this enjoyable place to go and do and spend time with people you care about.
Yeah. Capitalism sucks, but doing therapy is really lovely.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what was sort of that journey to finding like therapy? You said your psych classes were the most interesting ones. Like, was that like, oh, I want the stereotypical room with a couch and I talk to people? Or did you sort of like filter your way through the wide field of psychology?
No, I definitely had the filter experience. So after in undergrad, you do volunteer opportunities and some internships here and there. So I started to dip my toe in service in mental health. So a crisis hotline for folks of domestic violence, volunteering at a place with kiddos who had been through abusive situations. And then post college, I moved out to Chicago, and because I went to college on the East Coast, I moved out to Chicago and I started working in a school that had a program for pregnant teens where we did one-on-one counseling and group counseling and home visits once the child had arrived. And so that direct one-on-one relationship, that was my first time really having that experience, and I loved it. And I was still kind of confused. Do I want to be in a school setting, like a school counselor type, school psychologist type, or do I want something a bit more clinical? So after that experience, I moved up to Milwaukee and I got some experience working in a residential treatment center. So very different, right? And way more acuity, but that's where it really solidified for me that I want to go to grad school and I want to pursue mental health and I want to pursue counseling. So yeah, then after, I think it was maybe 3 years out of undergrad, I was like, okay, back to school. Here we go. Let's get the piece of paper that you need. And went back east for grad school. And then after that, I just straight from there started working in different levels of care. I worked in a partial program. I helped out in an IOP, intensive outpatient program, and then eventually found my way to private practice. So, it's like trickling through all the levels of care and gaining the experience, which I'm very grateful for now.
Yeah. I'm smiling as you sort of talk about like the super high intensity places where you volunteered or had placement opportunities, which is, yes, I think where most of us who experience that, I started at a homeless shelter, can appreciate the lens that gives you. And also, like, I reflect, I was like, I was not qualified to be doing the work I was doing.
My 22-year-old self had no right to be in that room.
No, definitely not. Do you mind? I'm gonna ask a geography question. What was sort of like your going to school out east? What was sort of the idea around therapy or psychology? Because here in the Midwest, it's still, I'll say there's still a stigma attached to it here. And what I've heard as a Midwesterner is on the coasts, that stigma is less. Have you
Yes.
noticed any of that, or would you sort of agree with that?
I would definitely agree with that. So I still, part of my practice, it's still virtually in the Philadelphia area. And I definitely notice that when I do an intake with a new Philadelphia client or Pennsylvania client in general, and I always ask, tell me about your therapy timeline. Have you been in therapy before? What's that experience like? What did you like? What did you not like? What was the personality of the therapist that meshed or maybe didn't mesh? So we look at their past, their therapeutic past. And for my East Coasters, it seems like there's nearly always a story about therapy, especially because I work with adults. So
Yep.
I went to therapy as an adolescent. I've been in couples therapy before. You're my second therapist. I did it a couple years ago. But for my Midwesterners, for my Milwaukee folks, not all, but some definitely come in and say, this is my first experience. I've read about it, I've thought about it, but I've never really taken that first initial action step. So this is me trying that for a first time. So even that little data point has stuck out to me as I've worked now in
Yep.
both markets.
Yeah, it's definitely doing the podcast. I obviously get to talk to therapists from all over the place. But one of my specialties is religious trauma. And it's like, it would be impossible for me to just do that if I wanted to focus down, which I don't. But like,
Yeah.
I couldn't fill my caseload on that. Whereas
Yeah.
people on the East Coast and West Coast absolutely fill their caseload on that. And what I have been told by folks out on the coast is like, it's almost weird if you don't have a therapist out here. I think in the Midwest, the vibe is still like, oh, you're like openly talking about your therapist. That makes me uncomfortable.
Right. Yes. Absolutely. I definitely agree with that sentiment of it's strange if you don't have a therapist. If you
Yeah.
if you haven't listened to self-help podcasts, if you haven't read that one book or know who Brene Brown is, or any of these kind of like more poppy psychology things, that's definitely what I experienced living so many years and growing up on the East Coast too. Of just
Yeah.
it's accepted, it's normalized.
Right. Yeah. And I think people sometimes forget how big like our geographic continent is.
Hmm.
That like, you're sort of vaguely aware like the South has a different culture than the Midwest. But like,
Yes.
oh no, even in something like this, like a profession where you're working shows up a lot differently for how people feel about it.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that. And at the end of the day, I mean, you hope that eventually we all get on board with the idea of just supporting our well-being and checking in and having a conversation
Yeah.
going, how the heck am I really doing? What's really going on in my mind, body, spirit, heart, all of the good stuff? How am I
Yeah.
doing? It's because that's really
Yeah.
at core what we do. We check in on people and allow them the opportunity to check in on themselves.
Right. Yeah. And I think I mean, obviously, I've been in practice for 16 years in the Midwest. I don't understand the hesitancy,
Sure. Yeah.
but I'm biased.
Yeah.
Madeline, what was sort of the journey to private practice and eventually coming to a place where you wanted to open your own space and work for yourself?
I think the journey was fueled by a lot of um, serendipity and wonderful mentorship and leadership too. I was really lucky to have some, in my feeling, some powerhouse mentors who helped me make the leap, decide that I could do it, supported my own growth and learning of, well, what are going to be my therapies that I offer and how's it going to go? And how do I keep track of the whole 50 minutes so that I don't go over or under? The little things to the big things of what feels like me, what can I deliver that I actually feel a sense of passion and drive to deliver these modalities, these interventions for folks, and I find the right folks and the right folks find me. So that was something that and some of my mentors I'm still in close contact with, and they become the blend of friend and colleague and mentor, which is fantastic. I think it's necessary too when you're in private practice. You need to have those people that you admire and you respect around you.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think my experience has been owning my own practice of like the more aligned I am in my business practices, the more I draw not just clients, but my network professionally is far
Yeah,
more aligned than it used to be.
for sure. Yes.
Um, and that's really helpful, especially if you're in solo practice and you can feel a little bit like you're on an island sometimes to have
Yes.
that network of professionals that you admire but trust, can ask random questions. I just texted someone the other day. I was like, hey, I'm donating a gift basket. Do I put a business card in it? That feels weird. And it's
Yeah.
like, I don't need to take a class on that, but like it's a different experience of like, oh, this doesn't make sense to me from a business owner perspective, but like I should ask someone who's been doing it longer than I have.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. One of my first mentors said something way back when that really stuck with me. He said, especially when I'm in a professional setting, I love to be the least smartest person in the room. I love to learn from other people and be inspired by them and feel this kind of internal drive of the way your mind works is lighting up my mind, and that's a great feeling. It's this collaborative feeling, and that really resonated because that's something I try very hard to attend to while in private practice, which, like you just said, it's can be super isolating, and weeks blend into months and you realize you haven't connected with a colleague in a very long time. So yeah, I just that's something that's a core value of mine in practice, which is I love learning from my colleagues and connecting with my colleagues, and ideally feeling like I'm in a room of people who I love the way all of your brains work. And that's making my mind feel so excited again, rejuvenated about our field.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Definitely I hold that space with clients, but it's different with other professionals too. Yeah. Can you talk a little bit about sort of the way you like to work with people and the populations that you like to see?
Yeah. So I do adults. So I do adult individuals and I work with couples. And the core piece that I'm most passionate about is relationships. So I love working with couples. Couples to me is probably my like most tender spot. I think it's such a sacred, beautiful thing to be with someone else and decide that we have a connection that's important enough to us that we're going to go in a room and we're going to prioritize that connection's health. I think that's so meaningful. No matter what's currently going on, it's not always bright and sunny. Sometimes it's really hard, heavy stuff that they're coming in with. Yeah. And it's still an act of prioritizing that initial connection that they're coming in to meet with us. So couples work is where my heart really beats the hardest. And when I'm working with my individuals, I have kind of a few pockets of folks I work with. So as I said, I love working with people who are going through relationship struggles on an individual relationship. That could be professionally, that could be with a roommate, that could be with a partner. And also for a lot of my folks, it's just the relationship with themselves, how they see themselves, how they believe in themselves. Do they trust themselves? Have they ever had the opportunity to really hone self-trust? So that's an arena. And then I also hold on my caseload a corner of folks who are struggling with anxiety or obsessive compulsive disorder. And that's because I started my career in that field, in that realm. So it feels very important to me to continue to do that work because it's so specific. And I had a lot of experience in it. So it's one of my values to keep providing that for folks who find me and need that care, need that cognitive behavior approach. Yeah.
How were you sort of exposed to the idea of couples therapy?
I think it was a lot of self-study. It
Okay.
was reading books. It was hearing, an NPR interview with someone who wrote a book and just finding that interesting or enjoying the way that the author said certain things, and then just starting to find more and more, reading more books, taking courses, and eventually feeling this kind of intuitive voice in me that said, I think that's where I really want to go. I think it's less about being invited in and more about saying, I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to do it because it feels right in me. And the excitement I feel about it is pushing me to go after it. So it wasn't like this organic, oh, I got this one opportunity. It was a very conscious, I'm going to pursue this. I'm going to go after it.
Yeah. I find, because as a LMFT, licensed marriage family therapist, like I was taught how to do couples therapy first.
Yes.
But it made sense to my brain. I have ADHD, so I like a lot of things going on. And what I hear from other therapists is like, there's too much going on, or it's too intense. And like, for me, my brain lights up at that. So that's what I like. But I remember the first time I saw couples therapy live, where we got to watch therapy behind a one-way mirror.
Yeah.
And so you could watch somebody doing it live. And I was 20, because I graduated college early and was young for my grade. So like 20-year-old who doesn't know anything. I see this couple session and I'm like, oh, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And like everybody else in the room was like, okay, Jeremy, like you don't know anything yet, like take your time. But it really just it made so much sense to my brain that we're relational, and like having that relational lens, I can filter a lot of information quickly that way and explain it to clients in an approachable way. But then once you start seeing that, like you said, with your individual clients, you still have this relational lens. Like you can't turn that off.
Yes.
Once you start seeing the world as these sort of overlapping ecosystems that we all exist in.
Yes, I completely agree. Yeah. And I don't know if this happens to you, but it is, to me, that one of the fun mysteries of our field is you could be sitting in a session where you find yourself saying something or asking something to your client, and afterwards, in that 10-minute window that ideally you've kept for yourself, you don't always, but ideally you might have this moment of like, gosh, that felt like it really landed. I hope it did. But there's also something about it that landed for me as a person. Like maybe I needed to hear some of that reminder too, because at the end of it, we're also human beings who are going through relationships and life and growth, ideally. And so it's this really interesting parallel narrative that can happen, that's a very private experience.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's not always appropriate to process that with clients in real time. Sometimes that can be therapeutic. But that is, I think, where like having a network of folks is really important, and having like-minded professionals, because like it's a weird job being a therapist, and I try not to put it on a pedestal. But also like with HIPAA and all the things we're working with, like we can't talk to people about it.
Absolutely.
So you could have this really meaningful experience with a client and share in that and participate as a fellow human, and then you can't go home and talk about it with your own support network of not professionals, right? You can't go to your spouse, or you can't go to your best friend and talk about it. So it's a weird profession in sort of how some of those things work, where we show up ourselves and can experience a lot of change in that process, and also have to like experience it solo sometimes.
Yes, contain it, right? Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. This is a less fun part of the podcast. as the world's on fire, both literally and metaphorically. How do you sort of navigate your own mental health? What do you do to take care of yourself while being a business owner, while showing up for clients, while having existential dread in the headlines every day? What do you do to sort of navigate all of those moving pieces?
Yeah, I'm a big ritual person. So I find that I will do better with self-care if it's laid out in a way that it's an easy ritual for me to perform. There's step one, then there's step two, and then all I have to do is start it, and then I've got the momentum going of what's going to make me feel more grounded, more well that day. So for me in particular, I'm a morning person. So at some point in the morning, whether it's first upon waking or somewhere in the middle of my day, I really try to take 15 minutes where I'm present with my own self, my own heart, my own kind of check-in, a feeling of where am I today? And that might involve some music that grounds me, that might involve some journaling, that might involve reading some poetry or reading from another book that speaks to me. But but I always try to have there be like a little stack of available tools next to me when I'm going to sit and do this, so that all I have to do is start. Pull out the poetry book, flip to a random page, read it, sit with it. Do I feel like journaling? Great. My journal's right there with the pen. That's really the thing that grounds me the most. And then from there, and we see this now in Milwaukee today, getting outside, and feeling like the frigid cold air to ground me, or feeling the sunshine on my face, connecting back to my animal side, if you will, that being outside is good for me and it's nourishing me. And it's also great to feel like a little speck on the planet. You know, you're outside and you see all these things happening in nature, these fun, wild things. And all of a sudden you remember that you're just part of this whole soup pot of a world. And that, to me, that can be comforting.
Yeah. That's all really lovely. And I'm just chuckling as I work with religious trauma. So like opening the door to that world for folks who are coming out of some high control religion, like I try not to shape where we're going to land, but obviously like that's sort of my view on things as well. And so like, that we're just on a rock hurtling through space, and like we get to sort of choose what we do with our time, and that's really freeing, even if it can be a bit overwhelming sometimes. But we do have all these, I think, systemic factors, capitalism, you know, if your insurance is tied to employment and stuff like this, that makes it hard for people to connect with the ground under their feet. We call it grounding.
Yeah.
But literally, like, I think people sometimes miss that, like, oh, like I use a lot of nature metaphors for the work that we do. So talking about seasons and talking about periods of growth and nurturance and maintenance. And are we planting? Maybe we just need to be patient right now and wait for the seed. Like, but that's sort of, I think, taught out of people. Like we don't always connect with that seasonal change. It's in Milwaukee, if it's 40 degrees or negative 20 degrees, you go to work either way. If it's a bright sunny day and lovely, you still go to work. So like we don't have those seasonal shifts in a lot of our daily lives that I think are really important for us.
I agree. And what comes up in my mind when you're saying that is this place that we get caught between accepting the season, accepting the day, the moment, and then feeling that really intense urge to problem solve it, which I try to highlight for my folks. That's beautiful that you're trying to problem solve. What a strength, what a way to try to take care of yourself. And if it's not working, maybe we look at the other side of the coin, which is how can I let this be just what it is right here in this moment? How can I be here now in the now that's in front of me, which I know much easier said than done for so many of us, and especially in this current world that we're living in.
Yeah. And I think that's why I use nature so much, because very few people are out here trying to problem solve the daily weather. Should we respond to climate change? Yes, absolutely. But like the daily weather, you just plan for it, right? Like it's a thing. It's information that we take into account and make a plan for.
Yes.
And I think, again, getting comfortable with that, getting comfortable with like there are lots of things in our life that are out of our control. I talk about this relational lens we both use, like other people, the people we are in relation with are not under our control. We're taking information and planning accordingly, but we're not controlling it in the same way that we don't control the weather, but we might take a rain jacket with us, or we might grab a sweater. So I think that's just really relevant for people. And so many folks I work with talk about like, why don't we practice this? And I don't have a good answer for that. Like, hey, you're practicing it now in therapy, but something like ritual, something like connecting to nature, like those are things we could practice, and we just don't, because question mark, I don't know, we need to be good little worker bees, or we need to get a high score on the ACT. Like, I don't know.
Well, I think maybe there's safety, right? There's safety in being able to influence and flex sides of our identity that we feel we can control. And then when we're caught in a place where we can't control something, we can't control the other, we can't control, then it feels very uncertain, insecure, unsafe. And we try to claw it back. We hate it, right? We hate when we can't control it. I teach, I help lead some DBT groups, dialectical behavior groups. And DBT is very skills focused, and a group is a skills group. We're talking a skill, and that's your homework every week. So one of the modules in the skill workbook is interpersonal effectiveness. How do we get what we want in relationships? How do we maintain relationships? And how do we lead with self-respect in relationships too? Let's juggle all of these at the same time. So one of the things that comes up when we're teaching from that module is, what are the things that will get in the way of these skills? Let's just call a spade a spade. These skills are great on paper and they will not always work. And here are some things that will get in the way. And I love that the creator of DBT, you're laughing, I laugh about it too, because it's almost like she had a sense of humor to say, hey, I know that I put all this work and effort and research into the skills, and I'm still going to tell you they're not going to work sometimes. And here's why. Let me at least get ahead of it by telling you why. One of the core things is other people. Other people are not ready. They're not in that emotional place, whatever it is. So as skillful as you may try to be, as present, as grounded, whatever word we want to use, sometimes life is life. And then we turn towards acceptance and comfort with that, right? Where's my rain jacket? I guess it is going to rain after all.
And Marsha Linehan is one of the big names in the early DBT movement. That's whose workbook I use. I don't know if you are talking about that same one. When I introduced that concept to people, because I have a sports background and I blend a lot of my coaching approach to things. So I love the skills approach. But with DBT too, you have a deep philosophy background to it. It's well researched, it's scientific based, and there's philosophy. So like pages explaining the concept like radical acceptance, I'm such a top-down processor that like I need, why is this working?
Yes.
I will accept the skill works. I will practice it, but I'm never going to use it regularly if I don't know why it works. And I see so many people who need both. They need the skill and they need the why. They need the how is this actually supposed to accomplish this thing? Otherwise, it sounds a little wooey sometimes, especially some of the mindfulness skills with DBT. And I get that hesitancy. So I love DBT as the skills approach that it takes, but also the philosophy that sort of is in the background of why these things are working.
Yes. Yeah. I also find that if someone can understand why, then maybe they're more likely to do the run and leap of faith towards just trying it out, seeing how does it feel? How did I make it my own? And in these groups, we'll talk about remixing the skills to make it your version of that skill for that moment, which can feel like a big task and at the same time might feel a little empowering. It's an opportunity. So I definitely agree that the why behind it is very helpful to so many folks.
Yeah. And just the skills approach, I think that's so relevant for folks who, again, I think we get hung up on control a lot. They want to be able to control things when really sometimes we need to react, or we need to self-soothe, or we need to do these different things. So I have people go through the whole workbook and say 2 or 3 skills that you can use regularly.
Yes.
Let's not try and master all of them. Let's find 2 or 3 that we can sort of carry with us and keep in our utility belt when we need them. And they work for most scenarios that we're going to be in.
Yes.
And I think that's so calming for people who might get overwhelmed at the concept of a workbook, or like myself would never actually read a whole workbook front to back. And again, then it's just like, we have these different skills. We have these different things we can pull out as we need them, because we will. And that's just sort of baked into the process of sometimes we need to self-soothe. Sometimes we have things that we don't handle particularly well. And here's our different skill sets that we can use. And it's okay if you're bad at it. It's okay if nobody's taught you it before or you've never practiced it. I have, again, the sports analogy, but like I talk about shooting a left-handed free throw. Like you're going to be bad at it. You need to practice. Because I think a lot of people hear mindfulness and they think yoga and they're like, oh, I'm not flexible, so I'm not going to like that.
Yes.
And it's working past some of that to say like, well, you are going to be bad at it and that's okay. Let's practice it. I see a lot of intellectual folks who flex their brain muscles, but not their emotional muscles, or not their self-soothing muscles, and so being able to explain it in a way that I think makes sense to them. It's like, yeah, this is a muscle you've never built up. So
And maybe there's an opportunity for some fun, for some play in that, right? Like if I'm learning to play an instrument for the first time, I of course could go down the rabbit hole of judgment and criticism and self-consciousness. Of course I could. That's the easy rabbit hole to go down. And I could also choose to say, you know what, this is going to be goofy and absurd, and Twinkle Twinkle Little Star has never felt so, or it sounded so terrible, and I'm going to do it because why the heck not? So that's something I lean on a lot too, whether it's from my own practice of staying grounded these days or in the therapy room. How can we bring in some lightness, some laughter, some play, some awe of how funny and mysterious is this life that we're going through, right? Because that sometimes can feel like we're lowering the stakes, and we're finding a way to make it feel possible. Very similar to what you just said, Jeremy, about like, just choose 3 skills from this workbook. Let's not make it heavy. Let's keep it accessible.
Yeah. Do you talk about ritual as part of your own self-care, but do you use that terminology with clients?
I do, and it's interesting. In my observation, when I look at my past week of work, when I'm doing my notes, let's say, I'll notice that there will almost like these random themes will have popped up for the week. Like everyone might be talking about different things, but the theme is there of what the theme of the week was. So in this last month, I've noticed that the longing for feeling more safe, grounded, steady has come up a lot. And again, people are talking about it in different ways. They're not feeling it in their partnership. They're not feeling it at work with the review they just had, whatever, right? But that theme of how do I create my own sense of security, safety, grounding, belonging has been coming up a lot more. So this is something that I've been talking through with folks, and we've been trying to get creative and, again, playful, fun, open with it. It doesn't have to be this beautiful on paper ritual that you've established that people would admire. It's just whatever sounds fun to you. What would be enjoyable to try to do every day, even if you do it for 2 minutes? What would light you up?
Yeah. And I talk about ritual a lot as well as just sort of a way to I don't want to say trick, but I hate the phrase life hack. But we're being intentional with like playing with our own brain psychology.
Yeah.
If you light a candle before you do something, your brain responds differently to it. Like, I don't know, like we're simple mammals. Like some of this stuff is, if we flower it up, if we add just a touch of circumstance to it, our brain responds differently to it.
Mm-hmm.
And that little bit of intention setting, that little bit of holding some extra space lets our brain do something different with that in a way where we could chug our morning coffee and rush through our day, or we could take an extra minute or two and really enjoy it and make it a special part of our day that we look forward to.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, be here now. You don't get here again. It'll be gone in an instant. So be in it, participate in it. Why not?
Yeah. And I think, again, for so many folks, that's just like, that's why I like DBT and skill building, because it is a skill a lot of people haven't practiced. It's thinking about our next test or our next semester's classes or, the work project that's due. It's a lot of the next thing. Okay, this is done. Now what's next? And it's not a lot of like here and now.
Yes. I'll often chat with my folks about how, again, trying to view it almost like through a strengths lens, that our mind, our nervous system, like really wants to focus on yesterday or tomorrow from a safety perspective. What could I have learned? What could I have done differently from yesterday? And how do I influence tomorrow to keep myself safe and on the right path and feeling good and no conflict? Like, that's wonderful that our system is trying to do that for us. How meaningful, how loving, right? That trying to go strengths and saying, does this help us today? If we're caught in tomorrow or yesterday, then what's the opportunity we're missing today? And maybe that can feel most empowering. Scary too, to say, let me focus on today. Let me get comfortable with the rain. Let me get celebratory of the sun that's here today. And what is it like if I actually lend myself that opportunity to stay here today?
Yeah. Yeah. And then in couples work, expanding that to a whole another set of variables of that.
Yes.
How do we connect in the here and now with this other person?
Yes. Yes. One of my favorite schools of thought to pull from with my couples is Stan Tatkin's psychobiological approach to couples therapy, which, easier said, is PACT. And I love his work because he's very candid talking about that the health of that couple, that initial, he calls it a couple bubble, that initial couple bubble, that small ecosystem between these two people, if it's clean and healthy and fair and just, then that means that the ecosystems that exist outside of it are going to be better off. The children, the grandparents, the neighbors, the teachers, the friends, all of the other layers of that ecosystem are going to be better if the couple bubble is clear. So I chat with my couples about how can we, some of the things you might learn and adopt in individual therapy, how can we bring that in here, that you two are looking out for each other and really following that commitment, that agreement that I'm taking you on and you're taking me on. It's still my responsibility to look out for me. That's a way that I'm taking care of you. It's by looking out for me, right? It's very, it's a big circle that happens. And it's something that I think a lot of couples haven't considered, that what is the agreement? What is the commitment that I made when I said yes to you being my partner? Whether we're married or not doesn't matter. It's just saying, hey, you want to be my partner? And what does that really mean? What's the agreement?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think there's so much complexity that goes into that. I think so much of the practice of being present in the moment is helpful for couples too, because we get bogged down in what happened 3 weeks ago, 5 years ago,
Yes.
while we were dating, whatever it might be, or we're too far into the future of when the kids leave the house, or we're coming up on retirement age, or whatever it is. And there's so much there. And like, it's like sometimes we just need to like go for a walk together and remember how we like each other. And like that doesn't solve the issues, but so many people again are skipping that step. So many people are, we need to resolve these problems. We need to fix everything that's wrong, and then we can enjoy the couple, instead of we need to actively be participating in enjoyment so that we can solve our problems.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, what comes to mind is I think it's 5-to-1, the Gottman ratio that they found, right? That for one moment of conflict or tension with a couple, we need to have 5 positive moments. But we get stubborn and we're like, no, I had conflict with you. I don't want to do anything fun. No, I don't want you go take yourself for a walk, right? But we forget that that's the opportunity to rebalance things and feel connected to this person and this life that you can at least have influence over. You certainly can't control, and you can influence it by saying, let's pause the fight. Let's go for a walk. Let's try to hold hands, even though we're still mad at each other. And then maybe we'll start laughing as we're holding hands, because we can see that the anger we were expressing in there, somehow it's diffusing out here.
Yeah. Yeah, and it is some of that skill building, right? Some of that's being able to self-soothe and other things. The first thing I teach couples is how to use timeouts so that we're not escalating things. But it is, it's one of those things where it's like the 5-to-1 ratio is really hard. I don't introduce that early because I find couples get discouraged with it.
5 times? What do you mean?
Yeah. But like I talk about stacking wins, and sort of the way that we can build success is not let's jump back into the argument or let's resolve this issue we've had our entire relationship. It's let's have dinner together, let's cook together, let's take our creatures for an exercise, whether it's dogs or children or ourselves, like whatever that might look like. Let's do this. Let's watch our show, let's order pizza, whatever it is. Those easy wins, and then let's stack them. And then let's move into problem solving once we've resourced ourselves to do that. And again, like that's probably the thing couples fight me on the most, especially early on in the process, is like no, we haven't fixed anything. I'm still mad at them. I'm not going to spend time with them.
Yes.
And I was like, I'm not sidestepping our problems, but you need to. Like, I'm
Yes.
not ignoring it, but like, you need to have fun. Go do something together.
Yes.
And I think that's the thing that people fight me on the most, because once they buy in and they see the benefit, everything else gets easier.
Yes.
And it's so unscientific for me to summarize it that way, but like, that's how I talk about it with clients. Like, I can't explain to you how well this works. I just need you to do it because it works really well.
Yes. You got to feel it. I can't talk you out of it. You got to feel it.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And just that I like, even at couples therapy, like coming to session together, setting aside time
Yes.
for your relationship has already made a difference. Like, yeah, there's all these techniques and these schools of thoughts I can draw from, but like, ultimately, the thing that you will take out into your life when therapy is done is the ability to connect with each other in a moment.
Yes.
And like, that's what we need to practice. That's what we need to get good at.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. The piece about like a couple's client might fight you on it and not want to go do something that I try to really, and this is where some couples start to fight me on it too, but I still push through and try to see if we can even try it, is using play during conflict. Not that you're trying to all of a sudden be in a happy, joking mood, but can we have language? Can we have signals that will start to de-escalate just because we're going the total opposite side of the emotional spectrum, from anger and frustration, sadness, hurt, heavy, challenging emotions, over to play and laughter and comedy and absurdity.
Yep.
That's something I try to push in. So examples, I had one couple who they decided they wanted to have a code word where either one of them could say it when they were sensing that our conflict is really getting escalated now. We're both getting really activated. So their code word was deviled eggs. So one of them would scream out, deviled eggs. And then the other one would be like, okay, I'm going to go take a time out. I see it too. Like, we're both not being our best selves. And even something as simple as that, right? Or trying to use a nickname in the middle of a conflict. Very hard to do, because some people view that as, well, I'm giving up the fight. If I'm going to use your nickname, which we both know will soften you, that's me putting down my sword. And I don't want to do that, because then you win. And won't we both win if we can try to de-escalate this a little bit, if we can reconnect to fun and play and who we are, how we connect outside of this moment of conflict?
Yeah. Yeah. And I reframe so much of what we've been taught by society. Like, the only way to win an argument is to get out of it, like, to not participate in it. And like, because I'm a competitive person, I get digging in your heels with someone. Like, I understand that. And so just reframing is like, no, whoever calls out the argument and gets us out of it first is the winner. Like, that's what success is. That's the win. And I think helping people do some of that. And yeah, there's lots of techniques. I used to have people only be able to argue in a certain room in their house. And just like the absurdity of, hang on, our therapist told us we have to fight in the kitchen. And like, we gotta go tromp over to, like, it's so dumb. And then you get out of it very quickly.
Absolutely.
Or I use the analogy of my dogs. Like, I love my dogs and they dig in the garden and I get mad at them and I still love them. Why can we hold complexity for our creatures, but not for our partners? Like, it's a ridiculous standard we hold each other to. So just whatever we can use to really soften in that moment, so that connection is available again.
Yes. And then ultimately we remember that we are safe with this person, right? Ideally, that we are safe with our partner, even though the conflict was big and loud. We're reconnecting back to the lighter feelings that cue in, oh, right, they're not so bad. I could work through this with them. I could move my direction, that I have more capacity to work through this with them, which we lose when we're in conflict. And that's normal. I also try to tell my folks, like, there's nothing pathological about that. You're just a human being who's trying to protect your own. We're just trying to have the two of you not forget to protect the relationship as well. Right.
It's really a third entity. You have each individual and then you have the couple. And that's that's what I focus on as the marriage therapist.
Right. Which is fun.
Yeah, it is for sure. All right. We talked about your self-care. What's a current thing you recommend for people, or that has really been like providing you some joy in these trying times we're living through, I've been trying to find what's giving people some joy. What's something that's been lighting up your days or weeks?
That's a great question. I'm trying to lean in with time outside, because it for us here in Milwaukee, it's like, oh wow, we can be outside again. It's 50 degrees, not 20 degrees. So I'm really trying to notice on my daily walks with my dog, I'm trying to notice what has changed day to day outside. I'm trying to notice those daffodils that were hanging a little bit with just a bud are now at a 90 degree and they're opening a little more. I'm trying to notice that those squirrels seem to have moved in to that tree again across the street. And Henry's going to go crazy when he sees them. He's going to just chase them up the tree. For us here in Milwaukee, we have the gorgeous lake. I try to notice the color of the lake every day and how much waves are there or not. So mindfulness is effectively what I'm talking about. But again, that curious, playful experience of spring, which is look at how much it's changing so quickly. It's all coming back online. I'm looking out my window right now and I'm noticing for the first time that a tree across the street actually has leaves. I didn't notice that yesterday, and I feel a little bit in awe of how did I not notice those leaves? But these moments of connection and wonder, awe of what's happening around us, that so often we're looking down and we're missing it. We're missing that opportunity.
Yeah, for sure. I am a big nature person as well and have two elderly dogs. So our time outside is very wonderful and intentional. Also, I'm just going to do a quick plug for the Milwaukee Film Fest. By the time this episode goes out, will probably be one more day of the Film Fest, and then it'll be ending. But that has been my joy recently.
Yes.
Christopher Pollard has been on the podcast before, talking about Milwaukee Film. It is a lovely institution. As a Milwaukee native, I like to highlight some cool stuff. It's really a world-class film festival we have.
Yes.
So if you're interested, go to one of our historic theaters and catch a film and enjoy that. Madeline, this has been great.
Yeah, it was super fun. Thanks for having me.
If people want to learn more about your practice or they want to work with you, where do they go? How do they find you?
So you could find me the easy route, Psychology Today. Just look me up by name, or you could check out my website, which is madelinebushcounseling.com.
Yeah, and we will have those links in the show notes, so that's easy for folks to find, and licensed here in Wisconsin and also Pennsylvania, right?
Correct. Yes.
Very cool. Well, Madeline, thanks so much for taking the time to join me today.
Yeah. Be well, everybody.
Yes, and to all our wonderful listeners, thanks for tuning in again this week. We'll be back next week with another new episode. Take care, everyone.